You're listening to Skills World Live with Tom Bewick. News, views and interviews in association with FE News. Hello, welcome to episode 23 of Skills World Live. Tonight on the show, we're taking our FE bandwagon all global as we swap Skills World for WorldSkills. And by that, I'm talking about those famous Skills Olympic competitions that have been keeping us dazzled and amazed since their inception in Madrid in 1950, when Francisco Albert Vidal created a skills contest for the youth of Spain and Portugal. Since then, the WorldSkills movement has gone from strength to strength, just as the whole process of globalization and the importance of employability skills has grown up around us. Today, there are over 50 member countries, from Argentina to Zambia in Africa. And not forgetting Old Blighty, of course, which has been dutifully represented by WorldSkills UK board member Mark Dorr, usually seen decked out at the opening and closing medal ceremonies in his top-to-toe Union Jack suit. That's right, in a Union Jack suit. I've seen the photographic evidence. And outboss Mark Dorr, as we will hear shortly in the news, is about to go off and lead a training provider. The whole Skills World Live team, of course, wishes him well. On tonight's show, we'll be going all the way down under to Brisbane in Australia. 10,200 miles to be precise, as the crow flies, from my man cave studio here in the heart of Sussex, southern England, to the offices of David Hoey, WorldSkills International boss, and the man who has been instrumental in turning the skills competitions into a major global movement. After the news, we'll be playing an interview with David that was recorded earlier on today. Because not even the charm and influencing powers of the show's editor, Gavin O'Mara, can persuade an Aussie to get out of bed at 4 a.m. in the morning, Brisbane time, just to talk to me live on this show. In the middle segment of the programme, we'll be back closer to home, talking to the boss of WorldSkills UK, Neil Bentley-Gockmann, OBE. And joining the discussion will be Simon Bartley, that stalwart of a skills leader who is not only a former boss of UK Skills, but is also Honary President of WorldSkills. And don't go away too soon, because it's Thursday. And not only does that mean clapping for NHS and our wonderful key workers at 8 p.m. British Summer Time, but a tad before that, the hashtag Stand Up for Skills weekly segment will be with us once again. That's right, folks. The City and Guild Supremo, Kirstie Donnelly, will be back on her proverbial soapbox, interviewing another really interesting guest. But first, let's find out what's been making the news headlines in your skills world this evening. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has told MPs he will look at the idea of giving young people aged 16 to 25 an apprenticeship guarantee. This followed a question at yesterday's House of Commons Liaison Committee from the chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon, who warned Boris Johnson that his government was in danger of destroying the dream of building an apprenticeship nation as a result of the ongoing decline in apprenticeship starts in England. The idea of an apprenticeship or youth guarantee comes in a week that marks the anniversary of the Auger Review of Post-18 Education and Funding, in which reform of the apprenticeship, skills and FE system was made a key plank of the independent panel's report. In other news, Mark Dorr, Chief Executive of the Association of Employment and Learning Providers, will be leaving his role in mid-August to take up a new job leading a North Yorkshire-based training provider, the Skills Network. ALP's current Chief Operating Officer, Jane Hickey, has been promoted to become the Trade Association's Managing Director as part of a new structure which the ALP board has put in place to address the challenges that COVID-19 has presented. The ALP board said that Hickey's appointment recognised the crucial part that she has played in the organisation's development over recent years. And finally, 48% of university applicants are concerned that the coronavirus pandemic will negatively impact their chances of securing a place at their first choice university, according to research conducted by the Sutton Trust. With secondary schools remaining closed and universities across the country cancelling their open days this summer, many students are anxious about their next steps and unsure where to turn for advice and reassurance, the independent charity said. That's all your Skills World news from fenews.co.uk. Contact us at Skills World Live. Email skillsworld@fenews.co.uk. Follow us on Twitter @Tom Bewick, @FENews. Use the hashtag SkillsWorld. Call us on 02032 900 111. That's 02032 900 111. That's one of the Skills World Live team favourites. Certainly appears quite regularly on the show. Klinger, What 3RS, with a track called Find Myself. To frame tonight's discussions on what will happen to the WorldSkills competitions as a result of the pandemic. It was great to catch up earlier with the boss of WorldSkills International. Obviously, because of the time difference, we had to do a pre-record. After this very short break, you'll hear what the man at the top of the global skills competitions movement had to tell me. You're listening to Skills World Live with Tom Bewick. News, views and interviews in association with FE News. David Hoey, thanks so much for joining Skills World Live. How's things down in Australia with the coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, hi Tom. Things are good down here. Actually, I think there's one advantage of being an island.
And a continent.
Obviously, the country.
Yeah.
Australia's faring pretty well. I think it's a constant debate between lives versus livelihoods.
Sure.
But we're starting to lift restrictions and we're looking forward to the future. So let's hope that continues around the world.
So are non-essential shops open now? I mean, because at the moment here in the UK, it's basically supermarkets, pharmacies and garden centres and that's it. Is more commerce actually open in Australia? Yeah,
they're just starting to lift them in a gradual. I think the government did such a good job around restricting the damage and the deaths, so they're very hesitant and risk-averse in opening it up. But at the moment, restaurants can have 10 people in them, but it's a start. Queensland still has its border closed to the other states, whereas the other states have opened it up. So we're right now in the middle of this transition and reopening, but being a federal system, each state is going a little bit at their own pace, but that is also driven by some states have had no COVID cases for weeks.
Yeah.
And others are still having numbers. So, that's the thing they're watching.
Well, obviously, this is a global tragedy unfolding, but fingers crossed. I think we all hope for our economies and our livelihoods to get back on track as soon as possible. Now, by definition, David, WorldSkills has a globally dispersed workforce and a network of governance. I mean, how are some of the travel and other restrictions that countries have put in place, will put in place, likely to affect WorldSkills in the future?
That's a really good question, and it's something that keeps me busy every day because as a global movement, you've got the different layers. You've got all the national activities. Now, we have a very good network, and recently we've held meetings where we've been in touch with over 90% of our membership. At the national level, we've seen most skills competitions cancelled. Some were postponed to the end of this year, some were postponed to next year. We've seen in Europe, the regional event WorldSkills Europe was postponed from August through until January of next year. Yeah. And then Asia, Americas was something similar. But the WorldSkills International competition in Shanghai in September 2021 is still full steam ahead for that date because we're risk managing, risk mitigating, but because it's so far into the future, we should be okay. But of course, it's anyone's guess as to whether we eradicate, whether we manage, or we get a second, third wave come through.
Indeed. I mean, there's just so many unknowns, isn't there? There's the unknown unknowns, as Donald Rumsfeld might have once said. We don't know whether, for example, there'll be a major second spike. You don't know to what extent some of these future outbreaks could be regionally based. So, they're in some parts of the world and not in other parts of the world. I mean, that just must be a total nightmare from the point of view of running a global organisation.
You summed it up perfectly. Yeah, it is that thing that, because you could also get another part of that equation, and this is, in my executive talks with Shanghai. I think China is in a good position because they've been very ruthless in their attacking, eradicating or controlling COVID-19. And so even if China is ready to receive the world, our questions are, is the world ready to go to China? And Indeed. I think there's a number of equations around that, or a number of contributing parts to that. One is we've found that I think a lot of budgets for 2020 are in abeyance at the moment. Money was given out at the start. But the real question is going to be, what are budgets for 2021 going to be like? Secondly, you've got every country's, their priorities of expenditure and how many will be able to go. And then those who do go, what size teams will they send? And will people still have what's their risk appetite for travel? Yeah. So whether you've got the government saying, yes, you can go, and then you've got the insurance aspects and all these other things, will individuals feel comfortable travelling internationally again? So, it's a whole new world we're going to be going into.
Indeed, a big challenge, but I'm sure if there's one organisation in the world that can work its way through this problem or set of problems, it's WorldSkills International. Now, look, I just had a question with you about, I mean, you may be aware, there's a bit of a campaign underway here in the United Kingdom to bring back Global WorldSkills event. Obviously, we love the competition here. We did host it at the Excel in London in October 2011. I mean, how realistic do you think it is for us Brits to expect the global event to be back on these shores within the decade?
Well, I think it comes back to the bid that is ultimately put forward by WorldSkills UK and the stakeholders. But one thing that is very clear to us is that WorldSkills UK are highly respected internationally. They're engaged, they're influential, they're doing great work. They contribute, obviously, at the national level to the UK agenda, but they're a very important member to us internationally, and they're helping drive the value of WorldSkills as an organisation with what it does and the international benchmarking. So I think that they would be in a very good position. They'd have the respect of a lot of members. Of course, it also depends on who they go up against, but it'd be a very good competition if it was held in the UK. And more importantly, I think for the UK, it would be so good in the post-Brexit and that sort of stuff, because the UK, like a lot of countries, now is the time to be showing the value of the skill. And it was interesting, like WorldSkills has just joined UNESCO's Global Education Coalition.
Right.
And when you have a moment of quiet, like we're going through in the world where people are working from home, apart from the amazing work that our healthcare workers have been doing, you actually get a real good insight. It's actually who keeps the world turning. And they're the skilled workers.
Indeed.
Their lights turn on, the water comes out of the tap, the deliveries turn up at your door. Yeah. And that doesn't happen without a skilled group of people behind the scenes. So I think now more than ever, the UK, like a lot of countries, are recognising the value of skills.
Absolutely. I mean, again, it was one of those revelations at the start of the lockdown restrictions here in the UK. You go into supermarkets and actually see members of the public, visibly thanking the people stacking the shelves and the people at the checkouts, because they were just so grateful that somebody was still keeping the lights on and they were still able to get those essential supplies. It's been a wake-up call, hasn't it, for countries as to who their essential workers, who are the people that are the backbone of their economy. And it just turns out they happen to be the same people that you will see competing at your brilliant competitions around the world. So David, just one last question for you. I mean, you may be aware of this Centre of Excellence that WorldSkills UK has set up. This is a partnership with the awarding body NCFE. Mm-hmm. What do you think to initiatives like that?
Sorry, what do I think?
Of initiatives like this new Centre of Excellence that's been set up by WorldSkills UK. I mean, it's going to help apparently 40,000 disadvantaged students get some really elite skills.
I think I'd be saying, what took you so long?
Right, okay. That's great.
Because other countries have put these in place, and I think it's a fantastic initiative by WorldSkills UK, and obviously under the leadership of Neil Bentley in recent years since his appointment, because all the work that you do through, your further education bodies, they're all bringing students in, national qualification frameworks, level 4, level 5, rah, rah, rah. But at the end of the day, the competitiveness of the UK is its ability to push products into a global marketplace at a high quality and a good price for it to be attractive. And that's driven by excellence of skills in the workforce. Yeah. So to have a centre of excellence that will link you to international best practice, link you to international benchmarks around qualifications, etc., and standards of work, not so much qualifications, but the output of the work, is brilliant. So, I think it's a great initiative. And as I said,
great.
Tongue-in-cheek, what took you so long?
David Hoey, Chief Executive of WorldSkills International, thanks so much for extending your working day down there in Brisbane and coming on Skills World. Got my skills and worlds mixed up, but coming on Skills World Live. Thanks, David. Pleasure to talk to you tonight.
All right. Thanks heaps, Tom. All the best, everyone.
Subscribe to Skills World Live at fenews.co.uk/Skills World. That was one of our favourite Swedish artists, Thomas Skielberg, and it's a track called We Can Be Fearless. All these tracks, don't forget, they're all over at epidemicsound.com. No relation, I'm told, to the current pandemic. But anyway, that's the music we're licensed to play on this show. So to continue the discussion about the future of WorldSkills competitions and how we importantly ensure that they happen and we support all the young people that take part in them. Who better to get on this segment of the show than the Chief Executive of WorldSkills UK, Neil Bentley-Gockmann, OBE. Good evening, Neil.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, thanks for coming on. And of course, in this three-way conversation, we're also joined by your erstwhile colleague, Simon Bartley, Honary President of WorldSkills. Good evening, Simon.
Good evening, Tom. Good evening, Neil.
Great. All three of us. The technology's working tonight. Fantastic. Neil, you've been at the helm of WorldSkills UK since 2015. Before that, you were the Chief Operating Officer at the business organisation, the CBI. When you think about your career to date and your understanding of the skills and business world, what kind of things do you feel now uniquely your organisation, WorldSkills UK, can do to support young people and the sector during the pandemic?
I think that the biggest challenge that we're all facing at the minute is keeping young people engaged, forward-looking, optimistic. And that means helping prepare them for the challenges ahead and their own life challenges as well as challenges at work. And that's why what we're doing at WorldSkills UK at the minute is thinking how we keep young people at the forefront of what we're doing. So running our competitions program virtually, or with social distancing measures, thinking about how we run our national finals later in the year. And we're scenario planning that at the minute. And the key for us is to, I think, really stay focused on keep giving young people the skill set and the mindset that they're going to need to succeed. Because whatever happens economically over the next few months, young people with the right skill set and mindset will succeed. And I think that is what employers consistently, from my days at the CBI, always stands in good stead. What employers look for is they recruit for attitude as much as skill. And so where you've got the right mindset, the right outlook, the right attitude, you'll get on. Yeah,
indeed. That's a very inspired phrase, that one, recruit for mindset and train for skill. Brilliant. And now, Simon, you are, of course, a former CEO of, I think it was called UK Skills in those days, and you were part of the team that brought the global competition to London in 2011. And I seem to remember that event was sponsored by City and Guilds as well. Anyway, you were also elected as WorldSkills International President at the Jamaica General Assembly in 2011. Given the logistics involved in running a global movement like WorldSkills, I'd imagine you'll have a lot of empathy with colleagues like Neil and David Hoey, who spoke to me just earlier.
I do. And added to those two that you mentioned, I'd add Chris Humphreys, who's the acting president and chairman of WorldSkills, who pretty well took over on the day that not only his predecessor and my successor, Josta Hoey, died, but also that the coronavirus really started biting in Europe. So him and his team and Neil and his team have my sympathy and my admiration for what they've done to date in a closed-down world.
Yeah. I mean, Neil, going back to you, I mean, I was looking on your website earlier, and I mean, it's not as if you've been standing idly by throughout this crisis. I mean, you've been doing a lot, haven't you, to support young people, with digital resources. I mean, you've probably gone through, like a lot of organisations, about sort of 5 years of innovation in 5 weeks. Does that sound familiar to you?
It does. I mean, I think for all organisations in the skills sector, I mean, this has been a fast-track learning process, particularly in digital technology. I mean, what we are focusing on is helping around 200,000 young people over the next few months, not just through taking our skills competitions program into a virtual and online space, but also pushing out more digital resources. Some will be launching next week, which is about helping inspire more young people, keeping them forward-looking, keeping them positive about their future careers, and also looking to how we can support educators, teachers and trainers in the FE system by doing more CPD, launching CPD online resources. And that's all, all about all of us playing our part and saying, what can we do to make sure young people and professionals in the sector stay forward-looking? Because we all need the skills system to carry on delivering. If we're going to have a skills-led recovery coming out of this first phase of the crisis, I think we all need to be pushing very hard, and everybody's working in an accelerated way to make sure they're doing their bit.
Yeah. Simon, back to you again. I mean, obviously you've got this wealth of experience internationally, but of course you've also got a lot of experience in the UK skills, in particular in the English skills sector model as well. And I was talking to Philip Auger just last night. It's the anniversary of his report. We're expecting a white paper for further education later this year. I mean, reflecting back on your time, travelling the world and seeing, I'm sure, a combination of the good, bad and the ugly when it came to skills systems. Do you think we're still missing any tricks here in England, in the wider UK, in terms of things we should be adopting that other countries are doing, but we're not for some reason?
I think that, as I did for 8 years, travel around the world, meeting something like 75 member countries of WorldSkills, see the good, the bad, and the ugly, as you referred to.
It's not a pejorative way of
a few dollars more would, I'm sure, be another film of that genre that Neil would welcome if it was a few pounds more, not only in the support of the activities he's doing at the moment. It seems to me in my travels that the UK further education sector and WorldSkills UK in particular have been are in the bottom quartile of funded organisations and systems, and I think that could help.
Yeah.
The one thing I have noticed as I've moved around the world is that there has been an enormous build-up of feeling of importance of vocational skills, whether it's big players like in China or in Russia, whether it's countries in Africa like Kenya and Uganda that have joined. The political imperative has really taken root.
Right.
Having met the President of Russia, the Premier of China, the President most recently of Kenya, the Minister of Education of Uganda, all of them are buying into vocational skills in a way, both intellectually, economically, and also financially.
Yeah.
They all realize the big change that has occurred in the last 15 years, which is that vocational skills are an issue of economic well-being as well, or in place of what historically used to be only a version of education, the poor relation of education. So I think if only the UK government in particular could really get to grips with this understanding that Neil just talked about, that the future is going to be dependent on skills, vocational, craft, technical skills, and then really give it some intellectual support, then I think that would help us maintain our position, which is highly regarded amongst other members of the world, I should say.
Of course, yeah.
Sometimes I think we undersell ourselves.
Well, we do, and that's the irony, and as you both know, and I've worked a lot internationally too, and I'm always surprised actually how much more policymakers and people and companies in other countries, how much they think of our education and technical education brand. They tend to sometimes think about it a lot more than we do. Now, Neil, obviously you've with NCFE, you've set up this new Centre of Excellence. You've also got a sort of productivity skills lab going on. I think that's fair to say, echoing Simon's point there, you've really built, if you like, the intellectual muscle of your organisation over the past few years, and I'm sure you've got still more ambition to go. I mean, does that Centre of Excellence start to address, some of the points there that Simon was raising about how we've got to sort of link that, if you like, and indeed David Hoey was saying this to me as well, that sort of skills, productivity, workplace competence agenda, which ultimately is what defines a country's competitiveness, its innovation, its ability, as David Hoey was saying, to sell those goods and services that the rest of the world wants to buy from us. I mean, Russia, for example, when they hosted the recent WorldSkills competitions, they sort of lock, stock and barrel adopted those competition standards, and they insisted obviously it's a bit of a different type of democracy, Russia, to the one we've got, but they sort of insisted that their technical colleges actually followed those international benchmarks. I mean, have you got any reflections on that?
Yes, loads to say, because you're spot on in terms of the analysis around, thinking about how do we use international best practice, how do we use the standards that we're competing to, those global standards in WorldSkills, how do we mainstream that excellence back into UK skill systems? So, one of the big steps we're taking this year with the NCFE is setting up our Centre of Excellence, and that's all about using the know-how of our training managers who are in our skill system, who train young people year in, year out to meet world-class standards. How do we transfer that knowledge and know-how back into our school system? And so the big opportunity here is for college leaders really to think about how to use this as a CPD offer, which will help boost the training standards that the young people, their students, apprentices are getting, so that employers are getting higher standards of training. And colleges will also get potentially better Ofsted ratings, because Ofsted are looking at the use of competitions in college teaching and training as part of their grading now. So that joined upness, if you like, is coming out of the work we've been doing for a couple of years in our productivity lab, which is all about international benchmarking. You've mentioned Russia. What can we learn from Russia? What can we learn from Brazil? What can we learn from China, South Korea? What are all these countries doing that we can learn from? That's what we've been trying to bring back into our thinking around how WorldSkills UK is positioned, so that it helps inform public policy development from an international perspective, but also practical things around how to teach to higher standards. And, and one of the things that we're working on right now is the training we do for Team UK, to reach those elite standards. How can we turn that into an offer for more young people, so that it's for more students and more apprentices, so more get access to that elite training, but you can mainstream it so more and more young people are benefiting from us being part of this amazing global movement and global network. Yeah,
indeed, and it is an absolutely amazing global movement, and I think anyone that's been to a WorldSkills competition, whether it's at European level or at global level, whether they've went to the one in Excel in 2011 or indeed anywhere in the world, always are absolutely amazed when they go and see these wonderful young people from around the world benchmark their skills against one another. Now, Simon, as someone that's obviously been through that whole process, of winning a bid to bring WorldSkills to these shores, have you got any advice for? I'm sure Neil, he doesn't need too much advice, but have you got any advice for those, the team now that potentially could be putting a bid together to bring the global skills competition at some point in the next, I'd imagine within the decade, back to Blighty? Got any advice?
I hesitate to give Neil advice, other than to say, I think, firstly, go for it.
Yeah.
I think the process of deciding whether to make a bid, then preparing a bid and entering a competition against 1-2 other countries, in itself is beneficial to a country.
Yeah.
One should never go into a competition thinking you're going to lose, but one should never go into a competition thinking everything will be lost if you don't win. That whether that's a competitor at a WorldSkills competition or whether it's a member entering into the bidding for a WorldSkills competition.
Sure.
Other things are relatively straightforward. I have no doubt that Neil, with his employer-centric background, will build on the critical element, which is getting UK industry on board, as well as the UK, particularly further education, but increasingly higher education sectors on side. And then, of course, there's the government, the big underwriter of the whole project.
Absolutely.
WorldSkills will be looking, I know because I looked at five different competition rounds. WorldSkills will be looking to make sure that it doesn't place its premier event in the hands of a member whose government then withdraws or reneges on the deal that they made 4.5 years in advance of the process. So industry, education, government are the three legs of the stool which will allow Neil and WorldSkills UK to climb up and grasp the UK's fourth hosting of WorldSkills.
Fourth indeed. So, I mean, at least in this country, I think we're blessed that the skills competitions have a lot of cross-party support. It's not something I've ever noticed has sort of become a political football. So, Neil, last word to you. I mean, obviously, you're charged now with piloting the organisation through, like a lot of people in your position, through some difficult and choppy waters over the coming months and potentially years. What's your sort of hopes and ambitions for WorldSkills UK as you take the ship forward?
Our ambitions are all around how do we grow our impact and help more and more young people succeed. And that is through the work we're doing across the UK and what we can learn from internationally. And if there is a strategic ambition, public policy-wise, for a world-class skills system in the UK, and I think it's absolutely right that hosting WorldSkills is part of the answer to that, to be a catalyst around galvanising activities, focusing attention on skills and creating a legacy, a long-term lasting legacy into the next decade that will bring economic benefit for young people and employers. And so I think if we can together keep our focus, strategic focus, that long-term focus on that sort of ambition that we want to create a world-class skills system in the UK, then I think WorldSkills in the UK has got a fantastic future ahead.
Okay, what a wonderfully positive note to end this segment on. Neil Bentley-Gockmann, OBE, the Chief Executive of WorldSkills UK, Simon Bartley, Honary President of WorldSkills. Pleasure to talk to you this evening. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, pleasure. Thank you, Tom.
You're listening to Skills World Live with Tom Bewick.
Tell me apart. I dwell with the string they aching.
That was Gloria Tells and a song called Until You're Mine. Now it's that time of the week again when the microphone is duly wrestled from my clutches and I hand it over to that seasoned skills campaigner, Kirstie Donnelly. Good evening, Kirstie.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. So what's your reflections on WorldSkills then? I mean, given how involved actually City and Guilds is now and has been for many years.
Yeah, no, we're very, very, very committed to the work that WorldSkills does, and I think Neil and Simon did a great job there representing just how important it is that we put the skills of the UK on a world stage, and how important it is that we really remember those technical and those craft skills. A lot of the key skills actually that I've been talking about on your shows every week, really, Tom. That it's all these key workers that we've been relying on throughout COVID that we're obviously training and reskilling all the time.
Indeed. Now, look, we'll be clapping for them, of course, in 16 minutes' time. So I better stop chatting with you and hand over the mic. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Great. Well, evening, everybody. And I'm delighted tonight. I'm going to be joined by Fran Findlater, who formed a very interesting business called Bounce Back, having had a very successful corporate career of her own. And before I do, just bring Fran into conversation, I'll just sort of say a little bit more about tonight's topic, because tonight on our Stand Up for Skills segment, we're going to be talking about a whole different group of our society, many of whom, though, are very active learners and with whom, without the learning and skills that they are receiving, are going to be even more disadvantaged from the job market when they are finally released. I'm talking there, of course, about prisoners who already have limited freedoms anyway and have now been cut right down because of COVID, with no visits from friends or family or time outdoors, and clearly a massive impact on the learning and skills that they do as part of their release back out into society and the world of work. And we know, and there is lots of data and evidence that demonstrates that those skills that they learn are absolutely fundamental in reducing the likelihood of reoffending. So with that in mind, I think it's really important that I now welcome tonight's guest, who, as I say, is from an organisation who's at the very front line of delivering skills and helping literally thousands of prisoners turn their lives around once they are released. And I think, Fran, to date, you've already helped over 2,000 individuals. And we know that right now there are something between 80 and 82,000 people in prison, many of whom who will have had their learning interrupted in some way since we had the lockdown on the 24th of March. Mm-hmm. So thanks very much for joining tonight, Fran. And I've already touched on some of the issues of the shutdown on delivering skills and learning in prisons. But what do you now see are the real challenges as we start to think about coming out of COVID for this particular cohort?
Well, it's an interesting one, Kirstie, and I think that just going back a little bit to where we are now, we've had a lot of time to, well, not a lot of time, some time to evaluate, and we are, like everybody, learning on the hoof. So just as we go through this process, we've been really trying to see how we can do as much as we can do to keep ensuring that people are getting their learning. So, for example, when everything stopped, we had to start doing in-cell training. We had to change the way we looked at everything, as has everybody.
Yes.
And we had to find ways to avoid disappointment and from people getting angry and disappointing who were having courses that had to get stopped halfway through. They are disappointed. Does that mean they're going to reoffend? How is this going to change things now? It's a huge new environment, and there's a lot of things to consider. And I think the main thing is, if you imagine that on a day-to-day basis that we're going into a prison, we're engaging with people while they're in the training centre, we're supporting them for several months before they come out while they're training, and then we're supporting them when they come out and supporting them when they go into work, and we're supporting the employers. If you imagine there's not one single element of that left that works in the normal way. And so our immediate concern is that people we can continue in some way to keep some element of that. So obviously we're doing training. There's a lot of digital training going on. So we're looking at how we can counteract all the things that are, and it's a new world.
No, and I think that's right. And I think you sort of hit the nail on the head, really. We said none of us have been here before. We're all learning, and I think we all have to be very collaborative and cooperative. So, just on that note, how much cooperation are you actually getting from the prison service itself? Because, of course, you mentioned digital there, and that's been a theme throughout a number of the weeks on this show, which is how innovative and how much the skills sector has had to embrace digital. But we know there are lots of challenges for you doing that inside the prison sector. But has the prison sort of sector opened up to that a little bit more?
Well, I think from our point of view, I mean, I think it could be the door it could be the thing that opens the door, couldn't it, Kirstie? I mean, it could
absolutely be the tipping point
at last gets the digital into prisons, and wouldn't that be great? And it would make a huge difference to us. We've been banging on about it for quite a long time, and I think this might be a huge opportunity. And as everyone along the way has said, there are opportunities coming out of this, and that would make an enormous difference. And I think that's, and the prisons have been in this very supportive, because if we can work together, and we've been very collaborative with other organisations. I think one thing that's come out of this is an enormous amount of collaboration with other organisations and with the prisons. And they have given us all the help they can to enable things to happen. And we're actually now going to start a large employment initiative funded by the City of London as this is rolling on the July the 1st, because what we want to do is try and keep some sort of normality going, and the prisons are being very supportive of that as well, so we can try and get employment coming back in as well.
Good. And actually that's really interesting theme, because of course as we face out what are now predictions of something like 3.5 million unemployed, of which a million under the age of 25, that is going to mean that this sort of almost battle for jobs. I mean, we used to talk about the skill shortage, and now we're going to be talking about a battle for jobs. And of course, that means that people coming out of prison being released, they've got an even harder task to make the cut through, so to speak, into those jobs. So I was going to ask about what do you think, we can all do as a sector to try and get behind that and help that cut through happen effectively?
I think it's such a long list. I probably haven't got that. I think that at the moment, what we've got to try and do is just, in some way, find initiatives that we can, in terms of the education and training, just finding ways that we can do what we do best in prisons. From my point of view, it's absolutely in prisons, and then out of prison as well. The e-learning environment is now hugely important and invaluable to us. And whether that's in or out of prison, if we can engage people as soon as they come out we've given them tablets, we've given them phones, we've given them the technology. Now what we have to do is have all the support so that we can get the qualifications, we can get all the things that people need to feel that they can get a job at the end of this, and support them into further learning. And ultimately, from my point of view, that's, and from all of our point of view, the benefit of that is, as you quite rightly pointed out, that they don't go back to prison, they don't reoffend, and they still have opportunities. So the more we can continue to support the training and education in prisons and around prisons, the better from our point of view.
No, absolutely, and I think I mentioned in the introduction, it's proven, right, isn't it, that the 1 year reoffending rate is 34% for prison learners compared to 43% and over for non-learners. So, and we know that non-offending rate provides something like £25,000 per person back to the Exchequer. So I suppose if the Exchequer was listening tonight, the Chancellor was listening tonight, what would you be saying to him about the need to continue to invest in programmes that actually have the impact that I know your programme does?
Indeed.
Other than the obvious, yeah. Give us some more funding.
I can't add to that. I can wave and just say, yes, remember us. Yeah, that would be very nice.
Well, no, exactly. But I mean, I think, we touched a little bit a moment ago on the use of digital. And again, I know from our own work, investment there's obviously security issues. I accept that. But part of the problem surely is about the infrastructure and the investment that's required within the prison service to enable some of that technology to be brought in even before prisoners are released, so that you can actually start your work much sooner in a digital way. That would help enormously.
I think one of the things that also is harder, because we're based in London, and we're working in a lot of the London prisons, which, as you know, are a lot older, and the Victorian prisons are harder from that point of view. But actually, the investment in this would be invaluable, and it would transform what they need to transform, which is the numbers coming into prisons. So, all investment in terms of technology is just massively needed and valued now, and it's just that for us it would transform our ability to do more.
And as you've been sort of working through this sort of 10-week period now, I mean, you mentioned before some of the ways in which you've just had to learn literally on the hoof how to do what you've been doing pre-COVID. Just sort of give some of the listeners tonight some examples of how have you managed that? Because I know, talking as we have done to some of our college and private training provider sector, they've had challenges, but they don't have the same challenges you have. So what have been some of the innovations in which you have been able to carry on delivering, given you're talking about lockdown plus when you're talking about prisons?
Because obviously prisoners are now locked up 23 hours a day, so there's no access to them at all. So we've had to, I mean, luckily, as you asked earlier, the prisons have been very supportive. They gave us some notice. But I mean, it's not innovative. It's probably going backwards rather than forwards. But literally we're resorting to in-cell activity, really focusing on getting materials and information into the cells and enabling it. It comes out, it's evaluated, and then we send more packs in. Different prisons, interestingly, operate at different speeds. So some prisons are tearing through it and doing well. Others are taking longer. Very interesting in terms of, the response we're getting. And we're responding to the prisoners and the things that they need or they're interested in. And they're coming back all the time. A lot of them are very interested in science, and they're right. And so we're broadening what we can train in. And we're using prison radio extensively to spread the news and talk about new initiatives and new training opportunities. So one thing we're doing is we're working with the Royal Astronomical Society on space and the universe, and we're doing a whole series of programs. So we're looking at ways of engagement, but that's also embedded learning, if you like, as well as the simple packs that we've got in cells.
Well, it sounds to me that you have been incredibly creative, even though, as you say, you've maybe had to go backwards in order to go forward, so to speak. So
yes, and we're looking forward to the digital moment.
Exactly. Well, that's right. And I think we all can accept that, look, what many of us have spent years trying to make happen, COVID has actually had happen in 10 weeks. The tipping point for digital definitely has happened. So let's hope that the prison service doesn't lag behind this time. So look, Fran, you're doing some fantastic work. Thank you for sort of illuminating that, because I think it probably is a very important segment of our society that we possibly have forgotten about when we've been thinking about standing up for skills. So it's why I was very keen to bring you on tonight. And I think you've really illuminated a lot of the challenges faced, but at the same time, why it's important not to give up and to keep going. And clearly, you are obviously still providing lots of hope and potential opportunity for all those prisoners who will be very keen to get out on release, and probably would have been released actually had it not been for COVID. So thank you for your work. Yeah, and thank you for being with us. Thank you. Tom, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Kirstie. Time for me now to release you from your presenter duties. Another great hashtag Stand Up for Skills segment this week. Fran Findlater as well, founder of Bounce Back. Thank you to you. And of course, Kirstie Donnelly, Chief Executive of the City and Guilds Group. See you next week.
Bye.
You're listening to Skills World Live with Tom Bewick. Okay, well, it's that time of the evening. We'll shortly be out on our doorsteps, clapping for those wonderful NHS and key workers. What David Hoey reminded me, of course, are the backbone of our economies. On tomorrow's show, we'll be returning to that old chestnut of a debate. Is it safe for pupils and students to go back to our schools and colleges? And do join us next week for the latest, I say the latest, also the last of these daily evening live shows. Don't worry though, we're not going very far. Skills World Live will still be continuing in a weekly format for quite a while. Anyway, we'll have more to say. I'm sure Gavin O'Mara, the show's editor, will have something to say about all that in due course. But thanks so much for tuning in. We really had no idea that the programme would be as well received as it has been. And if you want to be on a future show, then simply email us, skillsworld@fenews.co.uk. And if you don't want to be on a future show, you just want to carry on listening, then still write to the show's editor anyway and let him know what topics and issues in Skills World we should be covering. Thanks as ever to our digital producer, Ellie Hansen. WorldSkills World Live is an FE News production, supported by the Federation of Awarding Bodies Platinum Partners Programme. Goodbye.